Hey guys, and welcome back to DarkLogic Studios' Attack on Titan theories and discussions. Before we go any further, I want to give you fair warning that these videos are going to contain lots and lots of spoilers. So if you're not caught up with the manga, then what are you doing with your life? Seriously though, if you don't want spoilers, you should probably click on something else. If you're all caught up though, then let's get to it.
You've got to come back with me!
Where?
Back to the future!
Well, you're familiar with the pliability of space-time, yes?
Of course, who isn't?
Hey guys, and welcome to part 1 of my Chapter 89 review and discussion. So this review is going to be chopped into 3 parts. In the second part we're going to be talking about Ymir, and in the third part we're going to be talking about Historia and Eren and the coordinate and all this royal blood shit. But in this video, part 1, you know we gotta talk about this stuff with Kruger first, and these memories from the future thing. What the hell's going on? We've had so much thrown at us over the past few chapters, like, I can't do it anymore. I'm exhausted. Just kidding, yes I can. I can do it forever. So, where do I even start? Well, I think I'm going to start from the beginning of the chapter, but before I get into the good stuff, I want to talk for a minute about this chapter itself and the characters. These characters have been through so much shit, like, you can just tell they're all exhausted, they're all just depressed, like, I mean, imagine how they must feel. Like, I don't know about you guys, but this chapter felt really strange. It felt kind of fractured. I'm not sure how else to put it. And I don't think it's just because of the bad translation. I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, because really, I think Isayama is trying to do that. Like, with this chapter, it really does feel like reality is kind of unraveling, right? Like, I'm not sure what's real or what's not anymore. And, you know, these poor characters. Obviously, Eren's, like, hallucinating and shit. Mikasa's not eating. And, you know, Hanji's totally changed. She's just not herself anymore. She's not goofy, fun Hanji anymore. She turned into Levi. And Levi just looks sad. Like, interesting about Levi, because I still think it's funny that Hanji was the next commander, because I know Levi is an Ackerman, and, you know, supposedly they're not leaders, they're followers, they all follow a liege, but, I mean, if you consider that, at least, like, Levi's maturity, like, Levi isn't bitter, I mean, he isn't angry at anybody, and really he made the choice, so he can't be angry at anybody. But Hanji, it's like she had no say in the matter. I mean, she said her piece, but she was ultimately ignored, and she didn't want Erwin to die, and she's mad at Eren and Mikasa for getting in the way, and maybe a little resentful towards Armin. She can't be mad at Levi because Erwin gave Levi that responsibility, and it was Levi's choice to make. So, but yeah, it's just pretty sad because Hanji was such a fun character, and now she's just like pissed. I always wondered, like, Hanji said to Eren, like, when they were first talking, that she used to be a really angry person, and the reason she's so happy is because she doesn't want to be angry anymore. But now she's just reverted back to being angry again. But Levi, he's being the mature adult. He's just like, you know, leave Eren alone, he's just a fucking kid. Like, give him a break. But I kind of hope Levi maybe confronts Hanji about this and tells her to fucking back off. But anyway, you know, then Armin, well, Armin's actually taking all this pretty well. Armin seems to be doing the best out of everybody, which is, it's pretty ironic considering that, you know, in the beginning of this, obviously, Armin was the one who, he couldn't even move, he was just, like, and now, in a way, at least right now, it seems like Armin is doing the best. I mean, I guess he kind of blacked out a lot of what happened leading up to his and Eren's confrontation with Verdult. So, but, you know, still, he freaking died. Almost died. Came back to life, and it's pretty cool. I love Armin's character arc, and like, just, I'm so curious to see what Armin is gonna say about all this, this stuff that Eren's thinking. And I mean, Armin's he's been very quiet since we finally, you know, got back to Eren and the others. Armin hasn't really said a whole lot, but you know, he's had the look a couple times, so we know he's thinking something. So I want to know what he's thinking. I want to know how he's gonna put all this together, what he's gonna have to say about it. Another thing I noticed is the way this chapter started was pretty interesting, because we left off the last chapter and it seemed like, you know, Eren was talking to Armin and Mikasa, but in the first page of this chapter, it opens and Hanji and Levi and Armin are looking at him and asking what he's doing, and Armin, you know, clearly some time has passed, because Armin's not even in the same clothes anymore. Now he's in his uniform. So, and Hanji asked Eren why he's standing there talking to himself. And I don't know why they didn't just assume that he's talking to Mikasa, because she's right there, but this is really weird, and it made me think that Eren, he must be like losing time or something. Like, he's just sitting there talking to himself. Like, has Mikasa just been sitting there listening this whole time? Like, what has he been saying? I guess she's heard all of this. Like, I don't know if Armin's been there the whole time. I guess not, but Mikasa has, so... And maybe, God, like, that's probably a good reason why she hasn't been eating. She's been sitting in that freaking cell listening to Eren talk to himself, listening to, like, the person that she cares about the most in the whole freaking world lose their mind, basically. That's fucked up. Damn, I just thought about that. That's freaking sad. Okay. So, in the last two panels of the chapter, of course, we see Kruger. He mentions Armin and Mikasa. He says, if you want to save Armin and Mikasa, then you have to fulfill your mission. It's basically the same thing that Grisha told Eren when he injected Eren with the serum. So I'm not quite sure whether this is supposed to be Eren's memory or Grisha's memory, but it's really interesting because it's a callback right back to the very first episode, when we already seen this before. We saw Eren wake up, he was having a dream, and he was seeing things that happen in the future. Does this happen with all Titan shifters? Or is it just Eren and Kruger that are experiencing this? Is there something special about these two characters? Could they really be, like, the same person? Like, there's a lot of theories going around, and, like, some people are saying maybe it's reincarnation, maybe it's, like, a time loop. So it's really interesting, and all this talk about time travel and stuff, it's got me thinking about all the different ways, all the different theories, and, you know, one of them is, like, a multiverse theory, where if you actually try to go back in the past and change something, you're really just going into another universe where things are a little bit different, and stuff like that. But I'll put some links in the description of some documentaries that I've thought of, so you guys can go check them out, because they can explain it a lot better than I can. So I went back to take a look at these flashbacks, and what we see are, well, we see Eren's mom get eaten, so he saw that happen in the future. And we just see a bunch of flashes of titans and blood and scared faces. And what we also see is this little clip of this melted toy soldier next to a fireplace, and some toys next to a window on a bed. So I wonder who these toys belong to. Whether this is inside the walls, or whether this is out in the Marleyan world that he's seeing. And then we have this weird clip of a wasp in somebody's eye. It's very Aeon Flux-ish. And then he sees his mom getting eaten, and it's all blurry. And then he wakes up. So this has already happened. And now, finally, we're seeing this happen again. So it's not just something that was thrown in there to be artistic or whatever. It actually has significance. And, you know, in the version of the manga, I think most people believe that what we see is an older version of Mikasa. You know, she's got the hair and the scarf, and I think that this is still important, even though it's different, because I think that even if, even though they changed it for the anime, I think that it's meant to convey the same thing. It's meant to show a glimpse into the future. But I think we might actually see, if this is a glimpse into the future, I wonder if this is something we are going to see, like, by the end of the manga. Like, I wonder if it's going to end with Mikasa saying, "See you later, Eren," kind of like Lost. Like, it started, the very first shot was an eye opening, right? And then the very last shot is an eye closing. So maybe it'll end up being something like that. Like, just, like, take this whole thing full circle. There's an episode of Lost called The Constant, and if you haven't seen Lost, I'll just give you a general idea of what happens. So, there's a character called Desmond, and he starts having these weird flashbacks of his past, and it's not like, they're not really flashbacks, they're not memories, he's actually going back to the past. His consciousness is traveling backwards in time to his past self. And what happens is he keeps going back and forth, and he forgets who he is in the present day. He starts thinking that he's his past self, so he doesn't have any idea what's going on when he flashes back to the present. And he talks to this scientist, Daniel. Daniel tells him that in order to stop it, he needs to find a constant. He needs to find something that is constant in his life in the past and in the present. And if he doesn't do that, then it's going to keep getting worse and worse, and his brain's going to short out, and he's going to have a brain aneurysm and die. And this exact thing happens to one of the other characters on the ship that they're on. And what's interesting, too, is that when this is happening to Desmond and this other character, they're actually, the worse it gets, they start getting these nosebleeds, just like Eren and Kruger do. So I wonder if Isayama was inspired by Lost a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised. So that's the kind of, like, time travel that I'm thinking about when it comes to what's going on with Eren right now. Like, except Isayama is taking it one step further. And when you think about it, Eren and Kruger are the only shifters that we've seen have these nosebleeds. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember seeing Reiner or Bertolt or Annie or Armin or any of these other shifters have these nosebleeds like this. And, like, Eren has them all the time, and the way Kruger walks out, he's already got his handkerchief ready. It's like he's used to having nosebleeds. He probably has them all the time too, but it seems to be unique to these two characters. Ymir, Zeke, neither of them either. Like, these seem to be the only two characters who are shifters who have this trait. Of course, we've seen that apparently they both can see the future too. That makes me think that these two traits are inherently connected in some way. So, is this like a similar thing that's happening in Attack on Titan? Except instead of, like, Eren going back in time through his own memories or through his own consciousness, he's actually experiencing Kruger's memories and consciousness. And like we saw that panel when he was actually sitting in Kruger's place in the memory. And you know, if you haven't seen Lost, then you should at least go and watch that one episode, because that episode is so fucking good. Like, I just rewatched it and it fucking made me cry all over again. It's so good. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it's so good. And another thing I thought of too, we know that Isayama is inspired by Watchmen. There's a sequence in Watchmen when Dr. Manhattan, he's on Mars, and he's thinking about his past, and he's thinking about all this stuff. And it's kind of talking about how, to him, because he is this kind of eternal godlike entity, time doesn't really exist. For him, everything's happening all at once, and he can perceive it all at once, apparently, because he's not restricted to the limits of, you know, the human condition. And so, yeah, if this is going to be some kind of, like, time thing, I definitely think it's going to be something like that. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I mean, it kind of goes along with these paths we're talking about. If you think that everything is connected, not just through space, but also through time, then that's pretty crazy. Like, what exactly does that mean? What's going to happen in the future with this? Like, what's going to happen to Eren? Like, is he going to have a brain aneurysm and die? I hope not. And of course, we gotta talk about the title of the first episode and the first chapter of the manga. To You in 2,000 Years. We've been wondering from the beginning what the heck this title means, and now that this has happened, it takes on a whole new meaning. So, what exactly can we take from this now? Well, to you in 2,000 years. Now that we have this narrative, we know that people in the story can, in a sense, access the future, gain memories, quote-unquote memories, from the future. Perhaps this entire story is our glimpse into what may come, in the same way that Eren and Kruger have glimpsed into the future. So whoever's telling the story to us, is telling us this story from the future, 2,000 years from now. So if that were true, that would mean that this story is actually taking place 2,000 years from now. I mean, it sounds like it's talking to you from the past, but I don't know if, like, it can be translated differently, but I wonder if it actually could be meant to say, to you from 2,000 years in the future. Like, how crazy would that be? Now, quite honestly, I wasn't sure what to make of all this, but you guys had some really interesting theories, and since I've had to push off that discussion video where I was going to feature your guys' theories, and I have no idea when I'm actually going to be able to get to it, I think instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to include a couple of your guys' comments in each video, because I usually reference what people say in the comments anyway, and I want to give you guys the credit that you deserve, because you guys come up with so many cool ideas. So from now on, I think for these discussion videos, I'm gonna take some of your guys' comments, the ones that are relevant to the subject matter, that I found really interesting, and I'm gonna go ahead and just include them in the video, because some of the things that you guys come up with just blows my friggin' mind. So, and here's one of them. So Dr. Slendy, oh wait, that's Dare Slendy. I'm gonna call you Dr. Slendy. They shared a theory that I thought was really interesting. What they said is, but whoever sends those memories back in time, most likely Eren, has to have reason for it, right? He wants to alter history. Kruger said, and I quote, "If you can't do that, everything will happen again. The same story, with the same mistakes again and again." At first it sounds like Isayama is trying to reference the fact that there are a lot of parallels between Eren and Grisha's life, and he's referencing the similarities. History is basically repeating itself. But Kruger follows up with Mikasa and Armin, "If you want to save them all, fulfill your mission." What if this is Eren basically talking to his father, forcing him to create a family, etc.? That's kind of crazy. That's kind of like, that just made me think of the first Terminator movie. You know, it's just this guy goes back in time and like has a baby with Sarah Connor, John Connor, and then, but like, if he had never gone back in time, John Connor would have never existed in order to create the resistance group that he's from. And it's like, what the fuck? Time travel stuff is so fucking weird. There's too many freaking paradoxes. So anyway, they continue. The most interesting part is, just take a look at the 44th page of the Yonkao translation. He says, "Love your sons." Sons? Combined with everything we know, things start getting weird. The first thing we saw was Eren dreaming of Mikasa, and in the anime it was other things, and we just talked about that. It looks like something has been influencing people and their decisions since the beginning. Eren, Kruger, Grisha, maybe even more. What if it is Eren, or maybe even Armin, who's been sending memories to people from the past to alter history? Maybe something happened that was out of their control, and their only chance was to restart everything. That's why history repeating itself is such a big topic. What if it's meant in a literal way? Guess it'd be like kind of like Groundhog Day, but like 100 years of it. 100 years repeating itself over and over again. Everything has already happened and someone is trying to fix everything, but I get the feeling that it isn't working. They also add, and don't forget that Armin is the narrator in the anime. Just saying, maybe it was Armin who did all this. And that could also explain the title of the first chapter or first episode. It was 2,000 years ago when the first person's memory was influenced. It all started there. Someone trying desperately to change the past. Oh, and don't you think it's interesting that there was a parallel in the last chapter which showed Eren seeing himself as Kruger, and we saw Kruger utterly confused after he gave his speech about Armin and Mikasa. They seem like odd details because they show that they have no idea whose these memories are, and Eren even confused Kruger's memories with his. So how do we know that everything Eren said, thought, or did were really decisions made by him? Not to mention that the last chapter kind of proved that most things happening are from Eren's perspective. Now I'm even questioning if certain events don't actually happen the way it was shown. It's a scary thought. Reminds me of a Rick and Morty episode, to be honest. I don't know if you've ever watched it. I haven't watched Rick and Morty, but I probably should. But that's interesting too, what they're saying, because it's a good point, and maybe that's why I felt like this chapter felt kind of fractured, is because we do seem to be seeing the story from Eren's point of view for the most part, and Eren's state of mind right now is kind of fractured. His memories are fractured, his reality is fractured, and he's like I said, he's losing time. He's kind of having these, I call them hallucinations, but they're not really hallucinations. He's recalling memories from the past from somebody else, and he's like, it's almost like in those moments he is Kruger in a sense. So it's super fucking weird. But I thought this was a really interesting theory, and it kind of makes sense because, yeah, I mean, we're getting all of this information now, but I think they said there was 2 years left of Attack on Titan, so all of this is going to go somewhere. These aren't just explanations that are being thrown at us at the last second. This is gonna come to something. These paths that they've been talking about, these are gonna come into play in a big way, and I think somebody is gonna find a way to travel through these paths and utilize them in a way that most shifters can't. Now, because Eren has seen the future, because Eren is recalling these memories so vividly, it does seem like Eren may have the ability, possibly, to travel through these pathways. After all, again, we did see that panel where he was sitting there in a flashback in Kruger's place, and if this ability to travel through time and space, if it's not physical, if it's consciousness, again, like the Constant in Lost, then we may have already seen Eren cross these paths without even realizing it, without him even realizing it. And also, Armin's had an interesting experience seeing the Colossal Titan when he first woke up, and as I said before, maybe that could be a sign of these paths as well. Like I said, he's clearly been thinking about something all this time. He hasn't said anything, I wonder why, but there's something going on, and I want to know what it is. So what does all this mean? Could Eren and Armin both be able to access these pathways? And when Isayama said that Eren and Armin would be taking different paths, did he mean that literally? As in different pathways? Like, was he using wordplay a little bit there? Or perhaps Armin really is royalty. It is suggested that these 9 Titans, the Titans themselves, have these personalities and desires and can even communicate with their host. And the way that it talks about this agreement that the progenitor Titan has with the first king and whoever is holding the coordinate, who's a member of the Reese family. So maybe this image of the Colossal Titan isn't actually a pathway like what I think we're seeing with Eren. They're quite a bit different. Eren's seeing himself in someone else's memory and experiencing somebody else's life, but Armin is actually seeing his Titan. So those are pretty different things. So maybe this isn't a pathway that we're seeing with Armin. Maybe this is actually his Titan trying to communicate with him. And from what it sounds like, only people who are members of the Reese family can actually communicate with their Titan. So maybe that's part of the puzzle too. Maybe that's another thing that makes the Reese or Fritz family unique in a sense. So who knows, maybe he will end up being royalty after all, I don't know. So what's gonna happen to these characters? What's gonna happen to Eren and Armin? And what else is Kruger gonna have to do with all this? It seemed like after chapter 88, I kind of thought that we were maybe gonna see him get eaten by Grisha and then that would be it. But now he's recalling memories from the future? What the heck is going on? Why is this? Is this an ability that's passed on through the specific Titan? The attack Titan? Eren and Kruger, maybe they're special in some way. They can travel through these paths unknowingly, it seems like. And maybe if Eren can hone that skill, if he can figure out how to do that, maybe he can change things. Maybe he can stop the cycle. The thing about Eren, though, I don't think Eren has the mental fortitude to do something like that. even if he could access these pathways. Like, he's a really determined character, but he's not, like, smart like Armin is. He's not stupid, but he doesn't have the kind of skill set that Armin has that I think would allow Armin to understand this and figure all this out. Like, if Armin had access to these pathways and he could experience this firsthand, imagine all the things that he might be able to learn and figure out and help other people understand about it. I've said before that I think if this story is part of a cycle that we're seeing, then the story we're being told has to be the time that that cycle is broken, or at least attempted to be. And, considering that too, Erwin's gone, so Armin's got to step up to the plate, and I think he's going to. I think he's cooking up a plan. He's cooking up an idea for what to do about all this. But if this is the case, if Eren and Armin can both find a way to access these pathways, or Armin turns out to be a Reese, and if Isayama was actually referencing these pathways literally in that interview where he said Eren and Armin would take different paths in a sense, quote unquote, then what is going to happen from here? How might Eren and Armin's paths differ, given what we know now? I had said before that I thought Eren would want to wipe out the Marley with the coordinate, while Armin would want to find a more diplomatic solution. But now that all of this has happened, that's not what it feels like is starting to unfold. So I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. Again, we have yet to see Armin's thoughts on all this, and that has me a little worried. Eren doesn't seem to be angry about any of this. He seems disoriented, exhausted, and sad, but he's not angry. Armin not really reacting to any of this. Now that Eren has literally been in an outside Eldian's shoes, now that he's experienced his father's memories, or maybe rather Kruger's memories, Eren, in a sense, understands this more than anyone else, at least on an emotional level, because he's been there. He's literally been to the past, and Eren has shown to always be concerned for the lives of others. He always wants to save everybody. He's always really sad and regretful when somebody dies. Armin is too, but in a sense, he's a little bit more self-centered if you think about it. Armin really has two things driving him. One is his dream of seeing the ocean, but the other, which I think is a more stronger desire, is the desire to prove his own worth. He's constantly devaluing himself. There's even one point when he's talking about killing himself, even when he sacrificed himself during the confrontation with Bertolt. It struck me that Armin truly believed killing himself to get the Colossal Titan was the most he could offer to humanity. It didn't really seem to occur to him what a huge loss he would be to the Survey Corps because of his strategic skill set. And even though Armin is grown as a character, still, that didn't happen very long ago. Armin's still struggling with his issues of self-worth. So what if this kind of self-loathing, this self-destructive nature kind of bleeds through about his feelings about the Eldians, about his own people, and their place in the world? Armin himself has always felt like a burden, and now it's like his entire society is a burden to the rest of the world, in a sense. So I wonder how he feels about that. Armin's got some pretty deep-seated emotions tied to this stuff. If he does gain access to these pathways, or if he turns out to be a Reese or Fritz, either way, he would have a lot of power to decide what happens to the Eldians, and if his feelings toward the Eldians, if he feels the same kind of self-loathing that he feels for himself deep down, then that could be really dangerous. Think about it, wouldn't that be what Isayama would do? Because everything has to be as fucked up as possible. And if Levi sacrificed Erwin to save Armin, because, well, I think it was mainly just to stop Erwin's suffering, but also because Armin may be the hope for the future of humanity, if Levi sacrificed Erwin for Armin for that purpose, and then Armin ends up turning around and wanting to destroy the Eldians, that would just be... I can see that happening. That would be so fucked up. These characters are not going to have a happy ending. I mean, we've already been shown that the Eldians pose a great threat to the rest of humanity, and apparently all this stuff about genocide and the Eldians being the only people who can become the Titans, as Kruger states in the chapter, he says that's the truth. Whatever, Kruger. First you say everything's a lie, and now you're saying, oh, but this one thing's true. Well, fuck you, Kruger. You are fucking frustrating. He tells Grisha that in order to save Eldia, he has to use the power of the progenitor Titan to either lead their army or destroy it, talking about the Titans. Because most people in the outside world want to destroy the Eldians completely, but the Marley want to keep them as weapons, to use as weapons. And that's why they want to get the progenitor Titan so they can do that, and use it against their other enemies. But of course, it's stated again in this chapter, as it was back during the Crystal Cave sequence, that the progenitor Titan can be used not only to control the Titans, but also to destroy them all. So theoretically, if they use the progenitor Titan to destroy all the Titans, then there wouldn't be no reason for the Marley to want to use them as weapons. There'd be no reason for the rest of the world to want to destroy them, theoretically. However, would that really be enough? I mean, someone's still going to have the power of the coordinate, so who's to say they couldn't bring back the Titans whenever they wanted? How would they ensure that the Titans could never come back? We know babies can be born as shifters. Would that stop that from happening as well? Even if the Titans were all destroyed and the Eldians basically turned back into normal human beings, would that really end the stigma against them? Would people believe they were no longer a threat? Would they be welcomed back into the rest of human society? Probably not. And two, we've been shown that Armin does have a little bit of a dark side. There's been a few moments when Armin's been a little bit disturbing. I've really become more and more convinced that Armin may end up being the last one alive at the end of all this. That Armin's the narrator, the 2U in 2,000 years is from him. This is a story that he's telling us, I think. Even if you watch the opening credits, like, you know, we've got that scene of him covered in blood, and then the one candle. The lyrics of the song actually says in that moment that I will make sure your life has meaning, even if I'm the last one standing. It literally says, even if I'm the last one standing, right when it shows Armin. And then that symbolism with the candle, like Armin's totally going to be the last one left alive when all of this is over. And what if Armin ultimately decided that in order to truly save humanity, he himself would have to sacrifice his humanity, and maybe even his own people with it? The theme of sacrificing for the greater good is quite prominent in this story. If you think about it, as fucked up as it is, the logical decision would be to destroy the Eldians to keep the rest of humanity safe, if they really are as dangerous as it sounds. I mean, think about that scene in the opening credits again, where he's covered in blood. The Armin we see looks nothing like the Armin we know now. We know that he's covered in human blood because it's not evaporating, and he's just letting it pour all over his freaking face, like just fucking zen and shit. And then he turns his head down and opens his eyes, and he's got this crazed, blood-hungry look on his face. And I've been waiting to see this scene in the story since I first saw this. But what if it's not a literal image? What if it's symbolic? What if it's meant to symbolize Armin sacrificing his fellow Eldians for the greater good of humanity, and he ends up being the last one left? Kruger said either lead their army or destroy it. Destroying the army does mean killing Eldians. So, what if that's the path that ends up being taken? There was a theory going around that Armin might wind up being the antagonist. What if that turns out to be true? And he ends up massacring his entire race of people, all these characters that we know, all these people we've been rooting for the whole time. He ends up killing them all for everyone else, everyone on the outside, for the greater good of all humanity. If Armin really is the true hope for all humanity, and not just the Eldians, wouldn't that make the most sense? To destroy the Eldians so they're not a threat anymore? Could that be what Isayama is actually planning to do? What the fuck? No. What am I saying? No, I don't want that to happen. What the fuck? God, I hope I'm not right about this. This is fucked up. Holy shit. Why did I think about this? Somebody please hold my hand. I'm scared. Oh my god.
Most of us experience life as a linear progression. It's like this But this is an illusion because every day life presents us with an array of choices. As a result, life should look more like this. And each choice leads to a new path. And then each choice you take creates a new reality. Do you understand?
Put your hands on your hips.